Welcome to this ISE 2023 panel discussion. We're looking at interoperability today. Anders, first question to you, and then I'll come to John after. Is interoperability getting better or worse than it was 5 years ago, say?
Well, I think it's a tough question because we need to define what it is before we can talk about it. So if we look at the standards for AV equipment passing signals through, I generally think we're seeing more and more different protocols, which means that it's probably getting worse because we don't have standardized things. Yeah. If we look at brackets or things, so we need to define what it really is before we actually can say that it's getting better or worse.
John, same question to you. Do you think it's getting better than maybe it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I think I couldn't agree more, really. The standards aren't really aligned, and the gap is getting bigger because manufacturers are trying to put their own standards in place. I think it really needs a governing body to take a hold over it, to put people in the right direction.
With regards to the standards,
yes.
Then, just sort of tight to control almost, to say
absolutely.
You can't just introduce another platform.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice.
You look very wistful there, Anders, as you said that. But I always think it's a strange one, this, because to me, system integrators, the heart of what they do is to kind of solve problems and make box A talk to box B. So I guess when you talk about interoperability, that's kind of almost a temptation to say, well, your job is to do that, and that's where the skill set is. But I guess what we're talking about really here is you want your life to be made slightly easier, maybe, if the manufacturers would be a bit more flexible or communicate maybe with each other more. Is that fair to say, John?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if they're not putting things in place that they can communicate cross-platform, for an integrator, it becomes difficult to select an open platform of different manufacturers. So your selection of manufacturers is reduced based on what will interop.
Yeah. But it also means that your end client will go down a route where they in some way will end up in a dead end because they can only choose that particular brand with that particular platform and that particular protocol or thing, which means that we've seen projects where people need to roll back and change a lot of things in order to go a new route and new ways. So, I mean, we were just talking before we went in here about the dream we had when something like AVB came out. It's like maybe we could connect, video, audio, light, everything into one standard. And it's 10 years ago, and we're not there yet. Not at all.
John, do you sometimes feel your hands are maybe tied somewhat? Because when you speak to a client, they'll say, well, we've standardized on proAV mega brand A or mega brand B kind of thing. And so you don't have maybe as much. You say, well, if you try medium brand C, that would work better. Are your hands tied sometimes with interop because you maybe can't use some of the things you want to?
It is sometimes fully driven by the client's choice or their global standards that they might have applied. They might have been 2-3 years old of global standards, but then it's trying to encourage them to look at alternative options, but it's the process that it needs to go through. So that needs to go back to whoever manages their standards or the original consultancy, and that needs to go through a whole process of them proof of concept rooms, penetration testing on hardware, etc., etc. So it's not quite as easy for the end integrator to say, let's flip to product B from product A.
Yeah.
Now, it would be nice to have, like saying a standard that would make it possible to choose different products very easily and to switch between them, because then we would be able to also become more competitive in that way.
I just wondered, when you have conversations with manufacturers, do you think they are listening to integrators' requests for more interoperability, or do they still expect to buy everything from them if they're big enough and they can supply that thing? Anders, first of all, do you still get the impression they'd, obviously from a business point of view, they would like to?
Of course, they will really like from a business point of view, but I still see that more and more are trying to create common communities where they can, work together, like SVOE and Dante and other stuffs where they can talk to each other. But also on simpler things like, we talk about the only real standard we probably have is VESA. And that's just a standard. So if you look broad, we have, of course, some different kind of standards. But I would say that, yeah, definitely.
John, when you speak to manufacturers, do you feel like they're listening in regards to this topic, or does the business thing kind of cloud, the business angle kind of cloud everything?
Well, obviously, the goal from the manufacturers are to create their own micro ecosystem, so it's reliant on their products. There's got to be some sort of interop. There's got to be some flexibility. Not every manufacturer makes a complete ecosystem, so they've got to rely on another partner to fulfil the gaps that the products that they don't create.
Sure. Do you find the issue of interop is better or worse in regardless of this kind of product type? Is it better in control than it is in audio? Is it worse in LED than it is in flat panel displays or something? Are there kind of different bits of the chain that are Anders? Are there bits of the chain that are better than others, or are they all kind of suffering the same pain?
Well, we definitely see that the audio industry has a driven factor in the audio engineering society, pushing for new standards and testing things, which means that they have some kind of, you could say governmental thing more or less, but it becomes some kind of push on all the manufacturers of audio, which we not necessarily see in the LED or the projection or anything like that, which means that I would say it feels worse in the visual part than it does in the audio part.
Okay.
For
so
me,
is there interop better in, say, digital signage that is in audio or LED or something? Or
I think everybody's trying to create their own little niche. So, everybody's trying to come out the next best thing with their product. So, the backward compatibility, the interop, is always going to be that gap because everybody's progressing at different speeds with their products. I think out of everything, audio's probably the most aligned.
Yeah. They seem to have the tightest control, I think, don't they? If you can call it that, or even design, maybe you said that kind of
and maybe the companies that have gone down, their own route and in audio are now, rewinding and going down some new route that has, for instance, Dander or AVB or anything similar. So yeah, I agree that maybe right now we see audio is the best.
Better, yeah. It's nice to hear that even things are getting better, even if it maybe not as quick as we would like. Anders and John, many thanks for joining us today, and thanks for watching this video. And there's plenty more on the website and panel discussions from ISE 2023. See you soon. Bye bye.